Celebrating 44 years on the air, Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, a follow-up to the Vilsack confirmation, more about his responses to Congress. In southern gardening, pruning roses doesn't have to be a prickly situation. In the markets, another case of supply and demand. Zach's got that story. And in our feature, a boot camp for would-be urban farmers in Connecticut could work anywhere in the country. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everybody, I'm Mike Russell. Thanks for joining us today on Farm Week. As of the taping of this program, the confirmation of Tom Vilsack continues. He was, of course, Ag Secretary all through the Obama years. Now he appears poised to resume that position, pending final approval from the U.S. Senate. We have two reports in our follow-up. As Vilsack continues to answer questions during his confirmation hearings, we begin with this story from Farm Week's Jonah Holland.
Last week, former Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack began the process of becoming the current secretary for the Biden administration. Appearing virtually before the Senate Ag Committee, Vilsack fielded questions on a range of issues.
I think we are faced today with a number of why not opportunities and moments in agriculture, in the food industry, and in rural America.
Midwest senators pressed Vilsack on his vision for biofuels as the demand and availability of electric vehicles continues to rise.
I think we can make the case, should make the case, and will make the case that there is a role to play for biofuels in climate, in reduction of emissions.
Some COVID items brought up by the U.S. Senate Agriculture Committee centered on meat processing facilities and fair pricing for cattle producers.
I think we need alternative processing opportunities. Why? Not just from the competitive standpoint, but also from a resilience standpoint. We found that when one or two processing facilities shut down during COVID, that it created havoc in the market. We can't have that.
The topic of food insecurity was also on the table. Vilsack shared where he would strengthen USDA programs to help fight hunger.
I mean, it's all well and good to give somebody a SNAP card and say, go to your local grocery store and buy more food. That's great, assuming you have a grocery store. But if you don't have a grocery store, then what?
I know that you will not only bring...
Incoming Senate Ag Committee Chair Debbie Stabenow, a Democrat from Michigan, asked Vilsack about his plan for addressing claims of discrimination within the USDA.
We need to fully, deeply, and completely address the longstanding inequities, unfairness, and discrimination that has been the history of USDA programs for far too long, to a future where all are treated equitably, fairly, where there is zero tolerance for discrimination, where programs actually open up opportunity for all who need help, and lift the burden of persistent poverty for those most in need.
I'm Jonah Holland, reporting for Farm Week.
This is Peter Tubbs. A common question from senators at Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack's confirmation hearing was about the Biden administration's proposed emphasis on regenerative agriculture and carbon sequestration. The secretary argued that consumers want to know not simply what is in the food they eat, but how it was grown and raised, and whether sustainable practices were used.
So to the extent that we can make the case to the world that what's being raised, what's being grown, what's being sold outside the U.S. is being raised and grown in the most sustainable, animal-friendly environments, we can make the case and provide a market advantage to the U.S.
The Biden administration could use the Commodity Credit Corporation to create a carbon bank, a fund to pay farmers to store carbon in their soils. The storage would be done through a variety of tillage and cropping systems. The carbon bank would eventually pay farmers with funds paid by companies that release carbon into the atmosphere. The project would operate as a cap-and-trade system by putting a price on carbon emissions in an attempt to discourage further output, rewarding companies that either reduce their carbon footprint or find ways to remove carbon from the atmosphere. A carbon bank could potentially give farmers another revenue stream separate from the performance of their crops and reduce their dependence on federal dollars to maintain profitability.
So Vilsack is a strong proponent of regenerative agriculture and carbon capture. Many in the new administration, as you saw in that last story, see that as a way to give farmers an additional revenue stream. I spoke with soil scientist Dr. Larry Oldham at Mississippi State University, who offered his opinion about the strategy. Dr. Oldham, we appear headed toward a new kind of ag policy that in which carbon capture is likely to play a major role. In terms of soil science, how realistic is that kind of conversion over to a new kind of ag policy, and how long is it likely to take to implement on a wide scale?
In the terms of soil science, sequestering carbon is admirable goal. Carbon is a main component of soil organic matter, which is very useful for us in managing our soil, our plant nutrition. It retains, provides nutrients. It improves water relations, promotes soil aggregate formation and structural stability. So it's important to do whether or not it's part of a policy or not, just for your overall farm goals. It's not to be taken lightly, though. Managers must commit to do this, plan, implement, and follow through, starting with their strategic plan, their business plan. They need to learn about the crop and conservation interactions, develop some budgets, and track your performance. Because if these markets develop, you're going to have to monitor your progress. If this is going to develop into a market, there is interest from both the private sector and the public sector. You're going to have to monitor your progress. And what happens is that since carbon is dynamic, we have to maintain it in the soil. So keeping your eye on the ball is going to be crucial for growers, for farm managers to participate in the carbon economy.
Vilsack indicates that he is wanting to incentivize farmers to move toward this kind of policy. Do you think that will be possible?
It's entirely possible. There are also private sector businesses that are pointing towards that way. And again, this has been building up for about 20 years, and a lot of things are coming into place right now, including the methodologies and verification of what we have done on the field.
Dr. Oldham agrees that although carbon capture isn't a new idea, it does carry a great deal of new political weight. He says it's about to reach critical mass, that there are a number of large players in the field, and that it's already part of the national conversation. We'll be following the story. On the lighter side, pruning has been the theme of our Southern Gardening segment the last couple of shows. When it comes to roses, it's that time of year again, but it doesn't have to be a prickly situation. Here's Gary with a DIY.
I like to call the early spring the pruning season. Now's the perfect time to get your roses pruned and primed to look good this coming summer season. Today's Southern Gardening is in my home garden, and I'm going to demonstrate how to prune my roses growing in 25-gallon containers. Before you make the first cut, you've got to have the right tools. I always recommend using sharp tools, as a clean pruning cut will heal faster than a jagged cut. For pruning roses, I'll use my bypass hand pruners and maybe my loppers. And don't forget the heavy gloves and long sleeves, because those thorns are sharp. I'm going to start removing any dead wood cutting at the base of the rose. My next step is to remove any branches crossing or rubbing to open the center up. Now I'm going to start pruning the remaining branches. Pruning cuts should be made 1/2 inch above a new bud that's outward facing, as the new branch will grow in that direction away from the center of the plant. This will keep the center open, improve air circulation, and help reduce disease. Now's the perfect time to clean the clutter from around the base, as pests can overwinter there, which helps prevent foliar diseases. I'm going to try something different this year. Instead of using fresh mulch, I'm going to use these core mats to keep the weeds down and tidy up the containers. My roses are now ready to produce beautiful blooms this year. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman, and I'll see you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a short break here, but stick around. Coming up on our Farm Week feature, you might call it a boot camp for do-it-yourself growing. A year-long program in Connecticut that teaches would-be urban farmers how to grow produce and sell it at their local farmers markets. It's an intensive program, and it caters to those who want to feed their families and maybe sell what they grow to their neighbors. That's coming up on Farm Week.
At Mississippi State University, Extension is reaching beyond the college campus and impacting adult education. We're instructing agricultural professionals on the latest trends in research and technology, inspiring communities, empowering small businesses, and promoting the growth of healthy families where youth and adults can reach their fullest potential.
The MSU Extension Service, sharing our vision for the future.
ATVs are a ton of fun for people of all ages, but these powerful machines can also be a ton of trouble if safety guidelines aren't followed. Never carry more than one person on a single ride or four-wheeler. The four-wheeler can become unstable and very dangerous. ATVs are designed for off-road use only. Never drive one on a highway or any other paved surface, and always ride the right size machine at the right speed. This message brought to you by MSU Extension 4-H.
It's a simple idea. Knowledge that transforms lives shouldn't be limited to those on a campus, but extended to any and all who want or need it, wherever they are. At Mississippi State University, we've been making that possible for more than 100 years through the MSU Extension Service. What began as an effort to extend the latest research to farmers has become something much more. Today, we're helping Mississippians from all walks of life, giving them the tools they need to build a brighter future. We're sparking the imagination of students around the state and inspiring the next generation of doctors. We're helping rural communities find their way to the internet and connect to the world at large. And we're teaching families how to lead healthier lives in ways both big and small. MSU is standing firm in its commitment to that one simple idea: extend the knowledge that transforms lives, wherever they are.
Time once again for the Farm Week Market Report. Zach Ashmore here for our monthly dose of supply and demand. The report just dropped. Zach's on it. Zach?
Thanks, Mike. Market's still rising, but we saw a little break in the grain markets. Corn up, while soybeans and wheat down. Live cattle also rising. On top of that, the WASDE report just dropped. But first, let's take a look at the numbers. Last week's biggest gain, lumber, getting back up to the COVID supply prices we saw last year. But corn also up, not as high as late November last year, but still having an effect. Last week's biggest loss, soybeans, strangely enough, but not by a lot, about 4 cents. This month's WASDE report just dropped. As we've said, stocks and exports the biggest takeaway this time. Soybeans and corn still down in stocks while exports up. Markets already responding. Both commodities showing an upward trend. Let's jump in.
U.S. wheat unchanged. Hard red spring wheat and white wheat exports are raised. Hard red winter wheat exports are reduced. Durum wheat imports are raised. Durum and hard red spring food use are raised, while hard red winter and soft red winter are lowered. Global outlook is for greater supplies, increased consumption, higher exports, and reduced stocks. Global trade raised 1.1 million tons to 194.8 million tons overall. U.S. corn outlook is for higher exports and lower ending stocks. Exports raised 50 million bushels, reflecting historically large corn purchases by China. Global outlook is for higher production, lower consumption, and greater ending stocks relative to last month. Foreign corn production up, mostly in South Africa, offsetting lower production in Paraguay. U.S. rice projection is for stable supplies and domestic use, lower exports, and higher ending stocks. Global outlook is for larger supplies, higher consumption, increased trade, and reduced stocks. World trade has raised 0.9 million tons to 46.3 million as higher exports by India more than offset reduced exports by Thailand. U.S. soybean outlook is for increased exports and lower ending stocks. Soybean exports are projected at 2.25 billion bushels, up 20 million from last month. Crush unchanged. Global soybean supply and demand forecasts include higher exports and lower ending stocks. U.S. livestock forecast for total red meat and poultry production is raised from last month on higher forecast beef, pork, and broiler production. Turkey production forecast is unchanged, egg production reduced from last month, and milk production raised. Global beef export forecast raised, turkey export reduced from last month, pork, broiler, and egg export forecasts remain unchanged from last month. U.S. cotton supply and demand forecast shows slightly higher exports and lower ending stocks relative to last month. Production and domestic mill use are unchanged. World cotton forecasts show higher production, consumption, and imports led by changes in China. World trade is projected 350,000 bales higher than last month.
As you saw, corn and beans the biggest news from this past WASDE. That information has effects on what farmers choose to plant. Another factor, weather, and a bit of feeling, as it were. Market analyst Mark Gold lays down the details based on current price changes and speaks on how farmers make the big decision.
Well, I've seen estimates as high as 97 million acres on corn. The bean numbers, you look at the corn-bean ratio, it's about 2.6 on new crop beans and corn right now. Certainly an incentive to plant some beans. But I think it's going to be a case, as it always is, what's the weather in the spring? If we've got great weather in the spring, farmers are going to get in and plant corn. And they'll plant 95, 96 million acres of corn, and the rest will go into beans. Farmers love to grow corn, raise corn, harvest corn. So I don't know that it's a matter of economics per se. There's a lot of emotion involved in that. But these prices are good, $4.50 corn and $11.50 beans. Nothing to turn your nose up at. But I think price-wise, the beans are favored, but emotion-wise, the corn's favored.
On the cattle side, prices rising as well. The WASDE report pointed out lower egg production due to higher grain prices. Chickens got to eat if they're going to produce. The same applies to other livestock. I spoke with MSU Extension economist Josh Maples. He says price changes affect producer choices. Makes sense, but it's a bit more complicated than that. Here's Josh with the details.
You know, we're looking at higher grain prices right now, and that certainly impacts livestock prices, not just cattle prices, but anything that consumes feed to grow. But, you know, cattle, there is some flexibility throughout the cattle production system, and producers are going to make adjustments in response to these higher prices. And at the cow-calf and stocker levels, you know, we're likely going to see a shift towards more forage-based production. Maybe some other feedstuffs, some alternative feedstuffs, anything to find a cheaper way to add some pounds to these cattle at that stage. You know, the feedlot stage is where it gets really interesting. The feedlot stage is heavily dependent on grain to finish those cattle. The biggest decision there, Zach, is in terms of how heavy are the placements. So you can typically place anywhere between the 600 to 1,000 pounds, or kind of the normal range. You know, do you want to place smaller feeder cattle and feed them, which takes longer to do that and requires more feed? Or would you rather purchase heavier feeder cattle that somebody else has already added a lot of the weight to? That requires a shorter feeding period and less feed. That's going to be an important question moving through this year as we're facing these higher feed prices. I suspect that we're going to see higher demand for those heavier feeder cattle, and that's going to require that the pounds be added somewhere other than feedlots. So whether that be back in a stocker stage or back on the cow-calf produce, or even keeping cattle a little bit longer to add those pounds in a different setting. We're going to see that through prices for different weight cattle. So I suspect that the pressure is going to be most heavily seen on the price of lightweight feeder cattle, more so than the heavier weight cattle. And that's, again, a direct result of the higher feeding costs that feedlots are going to be facing.
With these challenges moving forward, the big pinch comes from an uncertain question. Will we resupply our grain stock, or will prices continue to remain high? The age-old ag answer depends on the weather. If this is a good weather year, prices are sure to follow. And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Mike?
Thanks, Zach. Your backyard garden is challenge enough. Imagine expanding a salad table and trying to make it a career. Just like in rural America, your biggest challenge is knowing what to grow and finding land to grow it on. One university program is a big help. Again, here's Peter Tubbs.
Exactly, because sanitizer can sit on top of something dirty, something filthy, and have, been sanitizing the scum on top, but it's not actually a clean water bottle.
A class on food safety is being taught on a Thursday night on the north side of Bridgeport, Connecticut. The class is part of a year-long program to teach the fundamentals of urban farming by University of Connecticut Extension. The 8 students pair classroom work with hours raising vegetables to qualify for certification that allows them to sell their produce at local farmers markets.
I've always been an entrepreneur, and I've always loved fruit and vegetables, and always wanted to gain more knowledge of how to grow them more and better and share them with my community.
I like to bring up Salmonella because it is one of the most common foodborne illnesses.
Tonight's class is being held at Reservoir Community Garden, a teaching farm on a brownfield site of a former strip mall. While the vegetables produced on the farm are sold to the public, the focus of the garden is on education over production.
And that's exactly what we want to prioritize, is getting as many hands in the soil as we can and getting as many interactions, for example, with younger folks to work alongside high school age urban farmers so that they can start to see a potential future and a potential career path.
Green Village Initiative is a Bridgeport nonprofit that coordinates 13 community gardens and 25 school gardens across the city. Empty lots are converted to garden plots for the public to use. GVI staff discovered there were gardeners who wanted to grow vegetables as more than a hobby.
We've partnered with UConn Extension to launch an urban farmer training program. So it's an intensive year-long program. We enroll about 10 to 15 people every year in that program, and they use the site on the east side as their training farm. So they're growing food, and then that group of individuals has gone through the process of starting a small business and getting insurance and everything, and the permits that are required to sell their produce, and they come to our farmers market on Saturdays, as well as other farmers markets in the city, to sell that produce.
Bridgeport's downtown farmers market caters to workers looking for produce on their lunch hour. Under a Grown in Connecticut tent, urban farming students sell produce that was picked that morning from a garden in the city limits. The urban farming class arose from GVI's work with the 8 farmers markets around the city.
We see our role in creating a just food system and creating opportunities for folks to grow produce for their families, start selling produce to their neighbors if they want to. Through our partnerships with the other farmers markets in Bridgeport, we were hearing that market managers started to hear requests for more Bridgeport grown produce from customers.
Growing produce in Bridgeport is possible due to the evolving local economy. The city was a manufacturing powerhouse from the Civil War through World War II, but the deindustrialization of the American economy hit Bridgeport hard. The loss of jobs and population has left the city with a large number of empty lots, which GVI is helping to convert to community gardens. The opportunity to grow produce provides both a degree of self-sufficiency and the potential for income. Khadija Muhammad and Mario Pena are nearing the end of their first season growing vegetables in the garden behind Barnum School in the East Side neighborhood of Bridgeport. The opportunity to grow their own crops has broadened their economic horizons.
The universe just worked in my favor because my daughter actually was part of 4-H, and she was actually in this same garden.
The call of the soil can be irresistible, even on 1/10 of an acre.
I've been part of Girl Scouts all my life. It's just something that's natural to me. My cousin and I, we both started backyard gardens because we was like, we need to sustain ourselves, sustainability, instead of relying on the government and the state. Like, how can we feed ourselves?
Teaching gardeners how to maximize their production also requires understanding their needs and the demands of the local produce market.
There's a long-running joke with a lot of the older women who come to our farm stand that we could convert the whole farm into okra and it still wouldn't be enough, and I love that. There's a lot of beauty in being able to work with folks that are really different from you. At least in my case, as like a a white farmer, learning about, as I said, crops from all over the world, and building up that knowledge base.
The number of empty lots waiting to be farmed in the city limits, combined with an audience hungry for local produce, could mean urban farming becomes a common profession in the formerly industrial city.
I would love for lots all over the city to be converted into farms, into orchards, and not just community ones, but those owned by the farmers who go through the urban farmer training course. I want there to be so many farmers in Bridgeport that I'm not special for doing it.
What I like about agriculture the most is that I tell people this all the time. It may be a joke to some, but plants haven't lied to me yet. People lie to me, but plants don't. I can go outside and have a great conversation with the plants and they won't say anything rude to me. They won't curse me out. They won't lie to me. So, yeah, I treat them well, they treat me well. I love that about agriculture in general.
And once you get your hands in the soil and you start to see how things grow, it does a lot to you as a person as well, because you're taking care of something that's living.
Getting their hands in the soil, what drives a lot of traditional farmers and apparently urban farmers too. Well, next week, an update on the hemp market. We're back in Iowa, where lessons learned by 90 licensed hemp growers are having an impact. Before the COVID outbreak, everybody saw dollar signs. Needless to say, that hasn't happened yet. Still, everyone agrees hemp is in its infancy. We'll talk to producers growing hemp with wiser, savvier minds. That's next time on Farm Week. Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching, and happy birthday to Leighton Spann, Anchor Emeritus.